أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا اللهم زدنا علما. May Allah put barakah in your time and in this time, especially in these very, very cold days, because it's a bit uncomfortable in the cold. But inshallah, we'll get rewarded for it. So, last week and previously, we were speaking about the nature of the Prophet. And now we're actually getting to know him for who he was. Now we're getting to know Rasulullah's character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we know how he was in gatherings, how when he was in gatherings, they would be speaking about previous times and he would sit and smile on occasion and he would just say something. He wouldn't be someone to destroy the mood, to wreck the mood. And we found out about his humility, and we spoke a bit about his humility and other adabs and etiquettes around what he used to do with eating, drinking, and other related topics. So today, we're going to, inshallah, take it from Hadith number 30 all the way to the end in the next 3 sessions. So, let's start. Hadith 30. This hadith is about Zahir. You may have heard of this story, and inshallah we'll go back and cover it. So, as normal, I'll read the hadith and then we'll go through it. So, الحديث الثلاثون قال حدثنا إسحاق بن منصور قال حدثنا عبد الرزاق قال حدثنا معمر عن ثابت عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه, who was sort of used to serve the Prophet, peace be upon him, as we covered before. أن رجلا من أهل البادية كان اسمه زاهرا وكان يهدي إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم هدية من البادية فيجهزه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أراد أن يخرج فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن زاهرا باديتنا ونحن حاضروه وكان صلى الله عليه وسلم يحبه وكان رجلا دميما فأتاه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوما وهو يبيع متاعه واحتضنه من خلفه وهو لا يبصره فقال من هذا أرسلني فالتفت فعرف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فجعل لا يألو ما ألصق ظهره بصدر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حين عرفه فجعل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من يشتري هذا العبد فقال يا رسول الله إذن والله تجدني كاسدا فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لكن عند الله لست بكاسد أو قال أنت عند الله غال. Okay, let's take a bit of context in this. Now, we covered, or we learned in this hadith, and if you're following along with the translation, that there was a man called Zahir who was from the people of the desert, right? He used to, sort of from the desert. And he would often leave Medina to the desert, come back and trade his goods. And he wasn't very good looking. And it's actually mentioned there. Rajulan damima. He wasn't very handsome. He wasn't very good looking. And when we say that, it's sort of euphemistic in a way. And when someone, for example, may not have a very good appearance, often people tend to stay away from them in that sort of regard. Like, it's a bit uncomfortable. But subhanAllah, the Prophet used to love, you could say, odd people. He used to love the outcasts. And this shows the humility of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Someone that was normally outcasted by everyone, the Prophet used to love him so much, because he never used to look at the character, the physical appearance. He used to look at the character. Who was this man? Who was this Zahir? He used to gift the Prophet whenever he would come back from his travels. He used to give him a gift. And in exchange, the Prophet would prepare his provisions whenever Zahir would go to travel again. So it teaches us and it reinforces as well, when we covered earlier, the adab and the etiquette of exchanging gifts and always giving people gifts and, receiving gifts. It reinforces that adab of giving and receiving gifts. And it highlights the humility of the Prophet on how much he loved him. Now, there was one time, as mentioned in the Hadith, where Zahir was selling his goods. And when you're in the marketplace, it's not a very nice place to be. It's not very aesthetically pleasing, if you could say it like that. So you could imagine he's selling his goods. There's like calling going on, bargaining. It's in the desert, sweating. You know, it's not a nice sight. It's not a nice sight. And with all the sweat and everything that's going on, the Prophet hugged him from behind. And when he says hugged him from behind, like look to the point where when he hugged him, the Prophet's arms would be under the armpits of Zahir. So even through all the sweat, the Prophet still hugged him. Shows the humility. I wouldn't even want to go near someone that's sweating that much. Shows the humility of the Prophet. He hugged him, you know, he's being a bit humorous with him. And then he said, and then Zahir was like, get off me. And the Prophet said, and he called out, who's going to buy this slave from me? As in a joking manner. And Zahir replied, you're not going to get much for me, because of obviously how he looks. He's like, you're not going to get much from me. You're going to find me as a sort of a lost investment, pretty much. So there's not much worth. However, the Prophet ﷺ then said, you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are very, very valuable. Or you are not, like whatever you say, as in you're a lost investment or something like that. From this we can take, and we can talk about the joking and the humor, and you could say sort of like pranks in Islam. And what are the conditions of pranks, joking and humor in Islam? Now there's a few conditions, or very short conditions, on pranks in Islam. So first of all, pranks should be short. They shouldn't drag on for too long. You don't want a prank dragging on for too long. And if you're going to prank someone, it should be done with someone that you love. That makes sure that there's no hard feelings. So if you do it with someone you love, but you keep it going for a long time, it might hurt. And if you do it with someone that you don't love or that doesn't love you, then it's a bit odd, and there might be a bit of awkwardness or a bit of hard feelings between you and that person. So they should be short. They should be done with someone that you love, not any random person. They should be playful, so they can't be something that would hurt someone or dehumanize someone in a way. And they cannot contain filth. So as long as they are in the boundaries of Islam, they cannot contain filth. And like we said with the joking before and humor, when we covered the story of the old lady last week, there can't be any lies. So if you're going to say a joke, you can say a joke, but it can't contain lies. Okay? Beautiful. Inshallah, we'll go to the next hadith. The smile of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is a beautiful hadith. So if I can just drag everyone's attention to it. So الحديث الحادي والثلاثون قال حدثنا هناد بن السري قال حدثنا أبو معاوية عن الأعمش عن إبراهيم عن عبيدة السلماني عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And this is a story. And if you want to follow on with the English, I would highly recommend it. إني لأعرف آخر أهل النار خروجا رجل يخرج منها زحفا فيقال له انطلق فادخل الجنة قال فيذهب ليدخل فيجد الناس قد أخذوا المنازل فيرجع فيقول رب قد أخذ الناس المنازل فيقال له أتذكر الزمان الذي كنت فيه فيقول نعم فيقال له تمن قال فتمنى فيقال له فإن لك الذي تمنيته وعشرة أضعاف الدنيا قال فيقول أتسخر بي وأنت الملك قال فلقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ضحك حتى بدت نواجذه So let's look at this story. The last man to exit hellfire and enter Jannah. The last man to exit hellfire and go to Jannah. This means that this was the, you could say this was the worst of the worst of the worst of the believers. So he had the worst actions and he dealt the most time in hellfire. However, he had belief. He believed, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. So at the end of the day, even though he's gonna deal for what he's done, and he's done so much since he's the last person to exit hellfire. However, he had that belief, so eventually he will go to Jannah. And he was the last person exiting Jahannam on all fours. So you can see that, and he dealt some time there. It was a struggle. And when he goes into Jannah, he's told, go find your place in Jannah. He goes into Jannah and he's like, all of the places are taken. There's no more space. Everyone's taken their places. Everyone's got their castles. Everyone's got their gardens. Everyone's got everything. Everyone's got their rivers, their trees, their lands. Everyone's got everything. They've taken up everything. I've got no more space. There's nowhere I can go. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do you remember your time that you spent before on earth? And he says, yes. He's like, think or ask for anything you want. So he does, or he wishes for anything he wants. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, you will get anything that you asked for, plus you will get 10 times the entire world. The entire world, the whole world, you'll get 10 times that plus anything you want on top. And that's probably even more. The guy couldn't believe it. The guy could not believe it. He's like, are you making fun of me? Are you making fun of me? And وَأَنْتَ الْمَلِكِ أَتَسْخَرُ بِهِ? Are you making fun of me? Like, there's no way. I'm the worst of the worst that they could possibly be of the believers. And you're going to give me 10 times the world plus everything I want? This is the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Honestly, like, think about ourselves. Honestly, I would be happy with a bit of land, a house in Jannah. That's it. A block, a suburb, a postcode. The last person to go into Jannah. The last person to leave Jahannam and go into Jannah. 10 times the world. Allah is Kareem. Allah is Kareem. Allah is generous. His generosity does not stop. His generosity does not stop. It is infinite. It is infinite. And subhanAllah, after seeing this story, the Prophet ﷺ smiled until his back teeth started to show. So it was a big smile. It was a very, very big smile. And honestly, the first time I read this hadith as well, before I even got to the part of smiling, I actually almost started laughing because it's, what a sight. What a sight. Are you making fun of me and you're the king? What a sight. I couldn't believe it. SubhanAllah. Okay. Now, this hadith is one of the biggest hadith in this entire Shamaa'il. Hadith number 32. And this hadith can probably take us until the end of this session. This hadith is one of the biggest and most prominent hadith in the entire Shamaa'il. This hadith is so prominent that there have been entire books explaining just this hadith. Entire books. I'm not talking about like 10-page books. I'm talking about 250-page books. Like the biggest one that I've seen is probably 257 pages. Just explaining this one hadith, hadith number 32, the story of Zara. Entire books on this hadith because of how profound it is. So, inshallah, let's get into it. This is one of the hadith that we'll explain as we read. So I won't read the whole thing and go back. We'll explain as we read. Okay, so الحديث الثاني والثلاثون حديث زرع. قال حدثنا علي بن حجر قال أخبرنا عيسى بن يونس عن هشام بن عروة عن أخيه عبد الله بن عروة عن عروة عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت. Before I get into it, let's do a bit of background before we get into it, before we go into what Aisha said. Background story. the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is sitting down, he's hanging out with Aisha, his wife. They're sitting down, they're talking, some giggling, some laughing going on, you know, some nice talk, just normal talking with husband and wife. And she says, you know what? Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. So it's like, okay, yalla, let's hear this story. Not sure if he said that, but we'll say that he inferred that for now. So, yalla, let's hear this story. And now Aisha starts to narrate the story that she told the Prophet. She said, جلست إحدى عشرة امرأة. So 11 ladies were sitting down. فتعاهدن وتعاقدن ألا يكتمن من أخبار أزواجهن شيئا. And we made an oath to one another that none of us are going to hide, or none of those women are going to hide anything about their husbands. They're going to describe their husbands fully, without hiding anything. As you can tell, this was a very long hadith. So, let's get into it. فقالت الأولى. So the first one said, and it's actually a very funny hadith. So we might laugh every here and there, and you can follow on with the translation if you want to get that understanding as well. فقالت الأولى زوجي لحم جمل غث على رأس جبل وعرب لا سهل فيرتقى ولا سمين فينتقل. Okay. Now, this entire hadith is metaphoric. They use metaphors like no tomorrow. And the use of metaphors, it honestly highlights how strong they were with their language. They wouldn't just speak things the way they were. They would speak in metaphors, and just like off the top of their head. The first thing I think of is probably like Shakespearean Arabic in a way, on another level. So they would speak in metaphors as if it was normal. It shows the strength of their language at the time. And what else does it show? Because Aisha is the one that's saying this story, it actually shows the intelligence of Aisha. And it shows the hikmah, the wisdom, one of the biggest wisdoms of the Prophet marrying Aisha at such a young age. Like we know that the Prophet ﷺ married her at a young age. She became like a student with the Prophet. She became like a student. She was a sponge. A sponge. She became one of the biggest scholars of Islam, one of the biggest muhaddithin, if not the biggest muhaddithin in Islam. She was, if not the biggest, then one of the biggest scholars of Islam. And that's one of the wisdoms of the Prophet marrying her at a young age. SubhanAllah. Okay. So, let's dissect this metaphor. So the first one said, Zawji, my husband is like the meat of a useless camel. So, like the meat of a useless camel. That means that he is useless. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't help at home. He doesn't help me with anything. He's useless. He just sits down and does nothing. He's absolutely useless. She also says that he is also at the top of a mountain that's hard to climb. Meaning, he's hard to get to. You can't talk to him whatsoever. You try talking to him, he gets angry. You try communicating with him, no. Just a hard person to speak to, a hard person to get to. So, the path to the mountain is hard. First of all, it's hard to get to him. And then when you get to him, the meat that you take, it's not even worth it. So he's useless and he's annoying to speak to, right? Would you think that this is backbiting? Honestly, when I first read this, I was like, wow, is this backbiting? No. Everyone's anonymous. فقالت الأولى. The first one said, the second one said, the third one said. No names are mentioned. It's anonymous. No backbiting going on. Okay? It's just a story. Then, قالت الثانية زوجي لا أثير خبره. I'm not going to stir up anything about my husband. I'm not going to say anything about my husband. لا أثير is that stirring up, that spreading. إني أخاف ألا أذره. Not because like I like him or in a way. No, it's because I'm scared I won't stop. If I'm going to start speaking about my husband's flaws, I'm not going to stop. إن أذكره أذكر عجره وبجره. If I'm going to start speaking about him, then I'm going to mention the inside and out. So, عجرة is the vein that puffs out on the neck. Like we said, this is all metaphorical. The vein that puffs out on the neck. And bujara is his belly button. So ujara means the outside, whatever comes on the outside, and bujara is whatever is kept on the inside. Okay? So if I'm going to start speaking about him, I'm not going to stop speaking about him. Such strong metaphors. Such strong metaphors. Okay? And as we can see, there's some people that had a lot to say about their husbands at the time. So, قالت الثالثة زوجي العشنق إن أنطق أطلق وإن أسكت أعلق. This one was living, actually I could say, a pretty sad life. So, زوجي العشنق. عشنق is like lanky or like a fool. So she's saying that my husband's a lanky fool. He's a fool. Right? His brain's not here. But if I speak about it, or if I speak to him, أطلق, he'll divorce me. وإن أسكت أعلق. And if I don't say anything, I stay معلق. معلق is, it's a point between marriage and divorce. So there's marriage, there's divorce, and there's that point in between where you're conveniently attached. That's what it's called. Conveniently attached. Being conveniently attached, meaning that you're still married, however your lifestyle, it's as if you're divorced. Okay? So, honestly, we can say that this isn't such a very good life, but this gives us great insight into how the people, or how the Arabs used to live at the time and how they used to think. Okay? Okay. So, قالت الرابعة. This one had something good to say about her husband. So, قالت الرابعة. زوجي كليل تهامة. Tihama is a place that was known to having very calm nights. Tihama is a low-lying place. Right? It's not very high. It's a low-lying place. The nights were very calm. The opposite of Tihama, you could say, was Najd. When they wanted to talk about like crazy nights, they would talk about Najd because that was a high point, a high place where their nights would be hot, cold, or like extremes. Tihama was always mild. It was always mellow. Okay? Tihama was a very low-lying region that was very mild-mannered. So when she's explaining her husband as being like the night of Tihama, or the night at the place of Tihama, that's pretty much saying that my husband's calm. He's calm-minded. He's mild-mannered in a way. He doesn't get angry quickly. He, doesn't go to any extremes where he's bipolar in a way. He's very calm, natural. لا حر ولا قر. It's not hot. It's not cold. ولا مخافة ولا سآمة. So we say that he's very mild in nature, and that she doesn't fear him in any way, in a bad way I'm talking about. And she's not worried that he'll ever cause her like displeasure in a way, which is a good thing. She had some good things to say about her husband. So we can take that some relationships have good relation, some of them not so good. And then قالت الخامسة. And this one, this statement, let's really focus on it. So قالت الخامسة زوجي إن دخل فهد وإن خرج أسد ولا يسأل عما عهد. I can't get over their metaphors. They were so strong in their metaphors. Okay. The fifth one said, and this one, the scholars till today are very confused. Not very confused, but they're confused about whether this was a positive characteristic, positive description, or was it a negative description of her husband. And it can be taken in both ways. So she's saying that when my husband enters the house, he's like a cheetah. And when he leaves the house, he's like a lion. And he doesn't inquire about the affairs of the house. Now, if you're writing your notes, what I would recommend is kind of draw like a table. The first column would be the phrase. The second column would be what she would mean if it's positive as a praise. And the second column would be what it would be if it was in a critical or criticism light. Now, cheetah pouncing. It can be taken as a praise or as a criticism. Let's cover the praise for all of the phrases. Cheetah pouncing. When he enters the house, he's like a cheetah pouncing. Positive light, that could be in his relationship with her. I'm talking about in that intimate relationship. So he comes in the house, they're very close in that relationship. Like a cheetah pouncing. Okay? So it's a good bond. It's a good bond there. And according to the scholars, it also means sort of relationship-wise, also in the sexual relationship. So straight away, they've got that very good bond with one another. Lion outside of the house. So when he leaves the house, he's like a lion. If we're going to look at it in a positive light, that means that he's always brave and courageous when he leaves the house. He's brave, courageous, well respected with everyone there. And when it says does not inquire about the affairs of the house, it means that he doesn't nitpick on, for example, where the money is being spent. So it shows his generosity. Okay. So the scholars have said that if it's going to be in a positive light, then he doesn't nitpick on or point out, oh, where's this money going? Where's this money going? He doesn't nitpick on where the money of the house is going. Oh, he's happy, he's content, he's generous. Okay? He's very generous. Now, if we're going to look at it in a critical light, cheetah pouncing means that he hits. Okay, the second he enters the house, he's like a cheetah pouncing. That means the second he enters the house, he starts to hit. And a lion outside of the house means he's always angry and does silly things, does foolish acts. And does not inquire about the affairs of the house could mean in a critical light that he's lazy. He doesn't do anything, doesn't help around the house, doesn't do anything. However, according to these scholars, the most likely scenario is that this is out of praise. The most likely scenario is that this explanation is most likely out of praise. Okay. So, as we can see, the language was very, very profound, very, very strong, and it actually takes a long time to dissect it. قالت السادسة زوجي إن أكل لف وإن شرب اشتف وإن اضطجع التف ولا يولج الكف ليعلم البث. Okay, this is actually a funny one. Okay, the sixth one said that when my husband eats, he eats everything, doesn't stop eating. When he eats. And when he drinks everything, doesn't stop. And when he sleeps, iltaf means that, so he sort of turns over, he shows his back to his wife. He covers the blanket, so he gets the blanket. Iltaf means like he covers himself with the blanket and he turns around. He doesn't show interest with his wife, doesn't like show care or anything like that. So he shows her his back when he sleeps. So when he eats everything. When he drinks everything. When he goes to sleep, you see he's very like self-centered, this guy. When he goes to sleep, turns his back to me, right? And when she's going through a sad time, maybe she looks sad or depressed, or if she's sick, doesn't care, doesn't even touch. Now, the touch part could mean, for example, you know, when someone's sick, you know, you want to feel their head for temperature, like, are you okay? Stuff like that. Doesn't even touch. You're sick? Yeah, okay. Doesn't even ask if you're sick. Doesn't even care. If she's sad, crying, doesn't even care. So we can take that this husband was very self-centered and didn't really care about his wife much, which isn't a good thing, of course. But it gives us insight on how the Arabs were at the time. Now, let's just keep in mind that this is a story. Whether it was true or not true, Allahu A'lam. We don't know if this is a true story or not a true story. We also don't know whether this was after Islam or before Islam. Okay? So, قالت السابعة زوجي عيايا أو غيايا. Either way, عيايا means that he was impotent, so you can't really go to bed with her or can't really go to sleep with her. He was impotent. That's what عيايا means. And if it was غيايا, it means he's a fool. طبقاء also, he's a fool, يعني he's completely lost upstairs completely lost. كل داء له داء. Every sickness in the world, any sickness, any illness that you could possibly think of in the world, my husband's got it. كل داء له داء. Any defect or sickness, he's got it. شجك أو فلك. That implies that he hits, so he breaks bones or he injures. أو جمع كلا لك. Or he breaks and he injures. Or he breaks the bones and he injures. So you can tell that as well, this guy's a very, very, very bad guy. So some of these guys aren't very good. Some of them are good. Some of them not very good. So it gives us, like I said, that insight into how the Arabs were at the time. قالت الثامنة, the 8th one, and we're getting close to the main one soon. The main one is the 11th one. So قالت الثامنة زوجي المس مس الأرنب. His touch is like the touch of a bunny or the touch of a rabbit. And very soft. He's got a very soft touch, which is a good thing. والريح ريح زرنب, and he's got a very, very, very sweet smell. Zarnab is this plant that smells very, very nice. So he smells nice, and he's got a soft touch, you know, no complaining. It's nice. And what these metaphors are, so he's got a soft touch, he's easy to be around, like we said, these are all metaphors. What it means really is he's easy to be like, he's easy to hang out with, he's easy to be around. When you go to a place and it's got a really ugly smell, you don't really want to be there. But if it's got a nice smell, you're happy to be there. So he's easy to be around. And then قالت التاسعة زوجي رفيع العماد طويل النجاد عظيم الرماد قريب البيت من الناد. Even the way they used to speak was poetic, just like that. So the 9th one, her husband had a top reputation. When he used to go out, everyone used to know him. That was him. He had a good reputation, a towering presence. So they used to spot him out from a mile away. Oh, that's him. A towering presence. If he speaks, his word is listened to. You know, he's got that respect. And he's very, very generous. Good attributes, good characteristics. He's very, very generous. Now, when she says that قريب البيت من الناد, so that his house was close to the meet. And Nad is where the leaders meet, the tribal leaders meet. This implies, or this shows that he was a nobleman. That means that he was always going to and from that place where the tribal leaders meet. Okay, he was always going to and from, which is why his house needed to be close. So you can tell this guy has good reputation, he's generous, very good characteristics. قالت العاشرة زوجي مالك وما مالك مالك خير من ذلك له إبل كثيرات المبارك قليلات المسارح إذا سمعنا صوت المزهر أيقن أنهن هوالك. This husband is a top guy. He's a top guy. So she's talking about her husband. My husband is Malik. What can I say about Malik? Saying Malik is better than any description that I can possibly give him. Yeah, she's talking good about her husband. He's better than any description that I could possibly give. Now, al-mabarik, mabrak. Think of mabrak. Mabrak is where people keep camels. It's like sort of an area where they keep camels. Mabarik means many areas in which there are camels. So this guy was rich. He was very wealthy. He had so many camels. Mabrak has many camels. He had many mabraks, many mabarik. So he was very rich. Qalilatul masarih. Now, qalilatul masarih mean that they didn't really have much land for them to graze. So he never really took them out to graze. So the camels were always in those mabarik. He never let them go out in the fields and eat from the grass. How's that understood? You know, how's that a good thing? It's actually a good thing in two ways. And anyone that owns, for example, like animals, grazing animals, would know this 100%. The fact that he doesn't let them go out to graze means he almost hand feeds them. So he feeds them from food that they actually make, which has obviously more nutrients, etc., than the grass and general grass. So it would almost be like they're hand fed. So they were well taken care of. And if they're not out grazing then, and they're in those mabarik, that means that they're very close to the house. What does that mean? That means that this guy is very generous. How? They're very close to the house. When a guest comes, they don't get them dried meat or old milk or water. Gets them fresh milk. The camels are near the house. He'll go, he'll milk a camel and serve his guests fresh milk. As well, if guests come, he can slaughter a camel and they'll eat meat, which means that he was super generous, super generous. And that's actually emphasized in the next statement. إذا سمعنا صوت المزهر, the flute, mizhar is a flute. When we hear the sound of a flute, or when the camels hear the sound of the flute, they know that one of them is going to go. Khalas. One of them is going to get slaughtered. The flute means that the guests are coming, right? When they hear the sound of the flute, that means that the guests are coming. And when the camels hear the sound of the flute, that means that there's a guest coming over. Oh no, one of us is getting killed today. One of us is going to get slaughtered today. Shows his generosity. Shows his generosity. Whenever a guest comes, he gives. When I first read this, I was like, how many camels does this guy have? Surely he can't invite guests over every single day, or else he'd be slaughtering a camel, a Ferrari, every single day. Yep. That's how generous he was. Okay? Awesome. Now, next, and this is the biggest one, the main one. I've got around 4 minutes, so I might into a bit of the next session, into the break, and then take it out of the next session. Okay. قالت الحادية عشرة زوجي أبو زرع وما أبو زرع أناس من حلي أذني. Anas means dangling. Huli means jewels. Udhunay, my ears. So he used to get her jewelry like no tomorrow. He used to spoil her with jewelry that used to hang from her ears, like earrings, sort of, just jewelry. He used to spoil a lot, you know, he used to gift a lot. وَمَلَأَ مِنْ شَحْمٍ عَضُدَيْ. Mala'a, full, shahm, fat, aduday, body parts. He used to fill her up with food. Now these days, it's a bit different to how it was back in the days. Back in the days, the beauty of a woman would be if she was really fat, really meaty. They would say, oh, that means that she's 1, from a wealthy family, 2, well taken care of, 3, which is the most important thing, she could bear children. If someone was large in size, she could bear children. Okay, which was really, really like loved and appreciated, especially back then, especially back then. So she was saying, وَمَلَأَ مِنْ شَحْمٍ عَضُدَيْ. He used to fill me up with fat. He used to fill me up with fat. وَبَجَّحَنِي فَبَجَّحَتْ إِلَيَّ نَفْسِي. And he made me so happy with myself that I started to self-admire myself. I started to develop this self-admiration in a way. وجدني في أهل غنيمة. غنيمة comes from ghanam. Ghanam means goat. Goat is like the lowest of the lowest of the animals that you eat, the herding animals, which is subhanAllah why the Prophet one of the reasons why the Prophet used to love eating from goat meat. So ghanam is one of the cheapest and lowest of animals. And whenever you see this ghunay, that nay part, it means small. Like it means small number. So it only had some small goats, which means that they were very poor. Bishaq, and were in such great hardship. He saw me when I was in my family with only a small amount of goats. We were very poor, and we were in a lot of hardship, right? And we only had a few goats. And we were very poor. فجعلني في أهل صهيل وأطيت ودائس ومنق. Sahil is the sound that a horse makes. Atit is the sound that a camel makes. Da'is means oxen. Why oxen? Oxen needs land. Oxen need land. So if you've got oxen, that means you've got heaps of land. Okay? Wa munaq. Munaq is like goodness in general. So he took me from having a little bit of goats, very, very poor, to I've got horses, I've got camels, I've got land with oxen. I'm in a good place. I'm in a very, very good place. And munaq is gardeners. And when you've got gardeners, you know you're set. When you've got gardeners, you know you've made it. You've got gardeners to make sure that everything is well taken care of and maintained. They don't even need to maintain it. فَعِنْدَهُ أَقُولُ فَلَا أُقَبَّحْ. Anything I say, he'll never put me down. He'll never put me down on anything I say. From how much he loves her. From how much he loves her, he'll never put me down anything that I say. وَأَرْقُدُ فَأَتَصَبَّحْ. And I'll sleep Oh, I stay sleeping in like no tomorrow. She'll stay sleeping in like no tomorrow. And she'll stay sleeping in to God knows when, and he would never wake her up. If anyone comes to wake her up, he'll tell them, don't wake her up, she's asleep. Don't wake her up, she's still asleep. So she would be sleeping for so long. وَأَشْرَبُ فَأَتَقَمَّحْ. And back then, everything was so scarce or scarce that if they're going to eat something or drink something, then they're going to have to drink it fully. She's saying that I would drink carelessly and I would just leave the cup half empty or half full and I would just leave it there because throw it out. It shows how careless she was in that drinking, and the fact that he loved her so much that he wouldn't even pick her up for it. Like, it's okay, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't say eating, however, with drinking obviously comes eating. Now, it's been 40 minutes, so inshallah I'll end this session. And we'll come back to the next session and continue as he goes for another few pages, inshallah. So, subhanallah wa bihamdik, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We'll break for around 10